All right, welcome back to Let's Talk About Things. I apologize that this is the first video that I have done in a long time. I have been super busy for much of this month, this past month. I'm taking a couple classes, and I'm also in the midst of a big move and getting ready for a wedding. So I just wanted to sort of touch on a couple things that I have been thinking about lately. The first is the midterms. The midterms are tomorrow, and there's been a big saying that's on my mind. It's by Benjamin Franklin. It's his famous saying, "A republic if you can keep it." And reason why it's been on my mind is because it seems like Republicans are going to do well tomorrow, and there are numerous election deniers who are running on the ballot, who are hundreds of them are probably going to win. These include positions like Congress. The House of Representatives is probably going to elect a large number of election deniers on top of the ones who are already in Congress. And lest we forget, the House of Representatives, amazingly enough, has a role in deciding the certification process of the election. You think, by the way, that this would be an automatic process, but instead the House has this big role to play. And so as a result, the Republicans, even in the House of Representatives, have a lot of influence, and they could potentially put their thumb on the scale in deciding who the next president is going to be. In addition to that, a number of Republicans are running for Secretary of State and governor in a number of states, and they'll have a big say in the choosing of the next president and in terms of the certification of elections. Republican election deniers are running for Secretary of State in places like Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, Arizona, Wyoming. Many of them who are probably going to win, particularly the ones running in Wyoming. That one's probably going to win, and the legislature has taken steps to probably make it sure that he cannot have a say in terms of certifying the election. Like, they're stripping him of his duties because of that, because the guy really is a nutcase. But there are other less promising signs, and I think Arizona, is going to be ground zero for this. Republican nominee Kari Lake, who is an open election denier, an unrepentant election denier, she is probably going to win tomorrow. Unlike a lot of election deniers, well, actually, unlike a few election deniers, she's going to be one of the many who wins, unless the polls are wrong. And if Biden wins her state again, she may try to put her thumb on the scale and try to put forward an alternate slate of electors. There's a whole legal mumbo jumbo to go through here that could lead to this. And while the possibility is remote, it's still a possibility, and that to me speaks of a bigger problem. But to me, it's not a problem that can be fixed by changes to America's institutions. People talk about abolishing the Electoral College and, increasing the number of justices on the Supreme Court. Some of these are good ideas, some of these are bad ideas. But the truth is, none of them will solve the underlying core problem in America's politics. And that is that half the country, despite all the evidence that has been presented, believes that the election was stolen. And they are voting for candidates who are running on that. That is an underlying problem in America's political culture. I'm not big on the whole new right thing about cultures and everything, but I think that political culture, it's an underlying problem that institutions can't fix. And it's one that's corrosive and that can eat away at the foundations of America's democracy. And we all know what happens when democracy goes away. We see this sometimes today with the fact that many states are run essentially as one-party states. They draw the districts in such a way that the other party can't possibly win. They pick the types of ID that their own voters are likely to have and exclude the ones that the opposition's likely to have. Things like that. So in terms of the whole I don't think the whole voter suppression or voter fraud, I don't think those two are really big deals. But subverting elections, in my opinion, it is a big step in towards that sort of future where democracy sort of goes out the window. The idea that, you know, whenever elections are fair in our minds, only we win. And if the opposition wins, it means they cheated. And when you concoct a reality like that, you know, you're unaccountable. And when you put that into legal practice, then democracy is over. And when democracy ends, we all know what happens. Our fundamental freedoms go away. People on the right are often fond of saying, oh, America's a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy. And they often point to the hostility that many founding fathers had towards pure democracy. The idea that, democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. But the truth is, there's no country in the world that's like a pure democracy. And pure democracies are dysfunctional. What most countries are what I like to call liberal democracies, or in America's case, constitutional republics. The idea that countries are run by the people and for the people, but at times the will of the people is set aside whenever it interferes with the rights of the individual or of minorities. And so that goes away when democracy goes away. And we have 200 years of experience to show us this, that democracy is no guarantee that our fundamental freedoms will be secured, but a lack of democracy is a guarantee that they will go away. And so it truly is unfortunate, in my opinion, that Republicans have taken this turn. And it's not just Republicans. Like, the whole election denying thing is something that, interestingly enough, in the governor's race in Georgia, you have a role reversal because Stacey Abrams has herself, practiced her own form of election denialism. And for that reason, I think that, if these Republicans win and they actually get away with enacting this, the Republican who's likely to win governor of Wisconsin tomorrow has said that when he wins, no Republican in Wisconsin will ever lose again. Well, what does that mean? It means Republicans are going to somehow be better, that they'll be able to win every election, or does it mean that they're going to subvert the election in their favor? Honestly, I'm not sure. And so I would very well be, I'm concerned about what's ultimately going to happen over the next few years. Like, the House is obviously going to spend much of the next 2 years, like, they're going to spend almost that entire time impeaching Biden and his administration again and again and again and again and again. But what's happening on the state level, in my opinion, is going to be a cause for concern. Congress has not done a lot, really done anything in a long time, but states are doing everything. And if parties can decide that within their own states, the other party is going to be shut out of power, that's not a healthy thing. And we all know too well what happens. Again, our fundamental freedoms, I think, really are on the line. People often say, oh, we always say this is the most important election of our lifetimes, but this time it really might be. If especially if, and this is a big if, our freedoms are on the line. And we've seen people like Ron DeSantis who have advocated for a bigger role of government in dictating, to things like companies, like, his war against Disney and various other actions he's taken solely because of political motivation, because the company happened to speak out against one of his policies. He's trying to punish them. That's happened quite a few times in Florida lately under DeSantis, and he's considered to be probably the second leading contender for president. So we often, I am a bit worried. I don't want to see the end of the experiment that the founders envisioned. And I think that's a real risk at the moment. I'm not a doomer, but I am concerned. And people who have tried to reassure, like people on the right have not been trying to really that hard to reassure. They're just say, "Oh, you're a bunch of hysteric. You're hysterical. You shouldn't be believed." Like that's not reassurance. That's just calling the messenger a liar. And so when people say that, I'm not reassured that this is not going to happen. But we need to be vigilant. We need to keep fighting. We need to keep voting, and we need to make it be known that the powers that be will not shut us up. Whether we're a Republican in a blue state or a Democrat in a red state or any mix of that, we need to become more involved in our democratic process. We need to participate more. We also need to tone down the rhetoric. There's been we heard about that attack on Paul Pelosi, and Republicans have not done. Many conservatives in the media have been kind of winking and nodding and cheering on what happened. You had Elon Musk, who I'll talk about in another segment, but he's basically sort of denied that what happened or shared conspiracy theories about that. And that's concerning. It's concerning that the CEO of one of the biggest social media companies is tweeting that stuff. But I mean, it is what it is. It's his platform now. He can run it however he wants. But I think that we need to do several things. First, we need to participate more in our democratic processes. Second, we need to tone down the rhetoric and have respect for one another, regardless of what their political views are. And third, we need to be vigilant in screening the information that we get and verifying that it's from a trusted source. And if the source you're watching is, paints itself as the arbiter of truth and saying others are lying, then maybe that should give you pause about whether or not they're really trustworthy. And so I think that if we're vigilant about all of those things, and we stay strong, we can potentially course correct, and we can very much save our democracy in a sense. It's going to come down to what each and every one of us is willing to do. And so I think it's, like I said, it's no exaggeration to say that American democracy is on the ballot, because of some of the candidates who are running. And so I think we need to be vigilant about what ultimately happens. And with that, I guess now would be as good a time as any to share my ratings for the election. So first for the House, I'm personally predicting Republicans are probably going to gain 23 seats. This I'm expecting a lot of these calls to probably be wrong. You might notice a few standing out here. This a lot of people are predicting Mary Peltola is probably going to win. The data I've been seeing, this is a few weeks ago, but the data I'm seeing suggests that Nick Begich is probably going to get second, which probably decreases Mary Peltola's chances of winning re-election from last call, though I think she certainly has a chance. I'm personally thinking there may be a clean sweep in the Rio Grande Valley for the Republicans. This should actually be likely Republican right here. In weeks, it's been clear that Mara Flores, despite running in a 15 Biden plus 15 seat, is probably going to win anyway. And there's been a lot of debate about this one. I personally think it might. I think if this one goes red, this one's also going red, but we'll have to see. Jared Golden, I think, is has the benefit of running against the guy he beat 4 years ago, so I think he could win re-election. And amazingly enough, the Republicans who are probably going to get elected are going to be Alan Fung. I think this is George Logan who's running against Johanna Hayes. George Santos is running down here. These are, the Long Island I think is going to see a swing to the right. So I think Republicans are probably going to win 3 out of the 4 seats here. I'm cutting against the grain a little bit. I people have been suggesting that J.R. Majewski is probably going to unseat Marcy Kaptur, but I still don't see it happening. Candidate quality I think does matter in the end, and so for that reason, I think Marcy Kaptur is probably going to hold on. Steve Shabbat is probably also going to hold on. It's probably going to be the last election he holds on to. And there's a couple of really great, outstanding Democratic congresswomen who've been really good about exposing the truth about what happened on January 6th, both of whom are unfortunately probably going to lose. Elaine Luria and Alyssa Slotkin are probably both going to be defeated tomorrow. As Is there anything else that's interesting that I want to point out? I mean, I've kind of fallen in line with a lot of thinkers on California. Although I think Mike Levin, I think will probably survive. Sabato is predicting he's going to lose. I personally think that he could probably still pull it out. I'm with the consensus here, by the way, that Jamie McLeod Skinner is probably not going to win this seat. But I think the others will probably hold on. And I think that Kim Schreier, it's close, but I think we'll probably hold on too. And finally, this is going to be a bit of a controversial call that's really cutting against the grain. I think that Frank Mervyn is probably going to hold on as well. There's been a lot of people who've suggested lately that Jennifer Ruth Green is probably going to pull this out, and she is a strong candidate, but it's been mostly based on spending and fundraising, which could very well be from out of state, and Frank Mervyn is a strong incumbent, and so I personally think the consensus is going to be wrong on this seat, and again I'm willing to be proven wrong on all of this. I'm willing to, like I said, I'm just putting this out there. This is not professional. This is just my guesses, and I'm thinking a lot of them are probably going to be wrong. But my guess is that Frank Mervyn is, despite the trends in the seat, is probably going to hold on. Same thing with Dan Kildee. The trends have not been good for him, but I see him holding on. And finally, these two seats down here, I think I agree with those who are saying that both these Democrats in Nevada, Southern Nevada, are probably pretty vulnerable and will probably end up losing. But again, these are just my guesses. I'm very open to the idea that this is not going to be. This is going to go a different way in some of these seats. Like I said, it's just a guess. This is, I believe, the Senate race. Yep, and I'm sort of in line with a grain of thought here. I wanted to say that I meant to call this race. This is supposed to be leans Democratic. Ralston, there's who's Mark Ralston, who's an expert in Nevada politics, thinks Catherine Cortez Masto is going to hold on, and I meant to highlight that in blue. I also think that I'm with the consensus here that Mark Kelly's probably going to hold on, and that Maggie Hassan's going to hold on, although it's gotten really interesting lately. I also agree that Dr. Oz is probably going to pull this out in the end. But I also think Georgia, by the way, is probably going to go to a runoff. And with that, I do not believe that overall control of the Senate will be decided tonight. And finally, as for the governors, I'm more or less in line with the consensus. Although, mind you, I think New York is probably going to be a lot more interesting. I have this at leans Democratic, unlike a lot of other people. I think that the decision of a number of Hasidic groups in New York to endorse Lee Zeldin, I think, is going to make this really interesting. And I'm personally not going to be surprised. At least that surprised. It would be an upset, but I wouldn't be that surprised if Zeldin actually pulls this out. But I mean, it's still, Hochul is definitely the favorite, but some of these Hasidic groups would not endorse a Zeldin if they didn't think he could win. He can win. I also am of the opinion that Tony Evers is going to lose, and that Steve Sisolak is going to lose here. I have DeSantis as safe, and Greg Abbott is safe. I have Kemp is likely. This is really not going to be close. Now, there are a couple of races where I am cutting against the grain a little bit. So, split ticket and And Elections Daily actually have Laura Kelly winning re-election, whereas Sabato actually has Laura Kelly losing. I'm going to be of the opinion, by the way, that Laura Kelly, I think, can win. It's a red state, but Kelly, I think, is a very popular incumbent, or decently popular, and I think it would be. There's another candidate on the ballot as well, and I think that this it's probably going to go her way. This is my guess. Arizona, I'm with the consensus that Lake is the favorite, barring a surprise. Although I think this is sort of on the edge of, I think, leans Republican toss up, but this is how I'm going. And now here's where I'm really cutting against the grain. This is the one I am most willing to be burned on. I think that Republicans actually have a real shot at winning the governor's race in Oregon. This is purely based on a hunch. People have talked about data lately that's suggesting that Tina Kotek is surging, but I'm personally still not going to be surprised if Christine Drazen can pull this out. Republicans, I think, have been running the best campaign for governor of Oregon that they have run in a long time. And for that reason, I am very open to the idea that Republicans can actually pull this out. Same thing here, although I think that Grissom is probably going to pull this out in the end. This is another one I would not be surprised seeing going the other way. And so these are generally my predictions, but I urge everybody to, go vote and to make their voices heard and to keep doing that year after year because we get the government that we vote for. And so I encourage everyone to vote. Thank you so much.